I like trick training. You like important training, like
Obedience.
Obedience, that's a good way to word it. And reactivity and whatever. Basically making the dog behave. I think that trick training is awesome because it's cute. It makes you look like a better dog trainer than you actually are. And it's enriching. You have to admit that it's enriching.
Yeah.
Testify.
Any sort of training is enriching.
Fair enough. But yeah, trick training is definitely unique in that it gets the dog's brain working in a different way than obedience training. So you can have really intense, like, healing sessions where you're working their brain and they're going to get as mentally tired. But it is different because they're solving a problem. They're trying to figure out what you mean. And I know healing is the same way, but when you get into really complicated behaviors, then it starts to work a little bit differently. We actually have a video on teaching your dog to weave backwards through your legs, if you want to see something that's pretty cool. But yeah, trick training is awesome. There's basically like 3 methods. Okay, there's 4 methods to teach trick training. But there's luring, which is the most common. Then there's free shaping, where essentially the dog chooses the trick, to way oversimplify that. We'll get into that later. And there's capturing. And then there's also, we're not going to discuss this one, pushing on your dog. You'll see some people like push the dog's bottom onto the ground. I don't think there's a name for that, but that is technically a way to teach how to trick train. This is the trick training master. Thank you, Betsy. She knows Kiss, among other things. And you'll see her on most of our trick training videos because I care about my dog knowing it. Do you want to go into, like, free shaping?
I don't really free shape.
That's true. I'll go into free shaping, and we have a video on why not to free shape. But I did it anyway. And essentially what free shaping looks like is I will stare at Betsy until she does something. So, for example, if I put a box in front of her, then I'll stare at her and she'll maybe paw at the box, maybe get in the box, whatever, and then I click or say yes and reward, and she learns how to, like, do whatever behavior by figuring it out herself. So that's a really unique way. The reason I don't recommend it, and you warned me of this, is because then she'll just offer stuff at random times. So I'll say sit, and she'll be like, I see a box over there, am I supposed to get in it? And I'm like, no, I said to sit. And she's like, well, you're looking at me, which was the cue to get in the box, so. But the basic cure for that is you want to sort of always put behavior on a cue, so you're never going to get a reward after a certain amount of time unless I tell you box, and then you get in it, and then you get the reward after they've figured out the basic behavior. And then any other time they offer it, they get nothing. Learned that one the hard way, that's why I feel so strongly. Capturing is basically seeing your dog do something and then saying yes and giving them a treat. So for example, some dogs, when you lure them, they won't lie down. I see this pretty commonly in puppy classes. But you can wait until the dog lies down on its own. You can tire it out first, so it's more likely to lay down, or you can just be watching it when it's close to its bed, and then as soon as they lie down, you say yes and treat. The reason this isn't the most common is because it's generally the slowest. Like, it takes for a long time if the dog isn't doing it constantly. But capturing is good for things besides trick training, to get a little off topic here, because you can teach things like relax, where you can't lure a dog into physically relaxing, but you can capture the dog's emotional state of relaxing, which is controversial because people will say, you can't capture an emotional state. I will fight you. I know you can with birds. It's still up in the air with dogs. I think you can. Luring is going to be the most common, and it's definitely the one I use the most. And basically it's put a treat or a toy at the nose or wherever, and then if you want to teach a spin, you lure them in a circle, they follow it, then you click and reward. Just before, I usually do just the second before they finish the behavior rather than when they've stopped doing anything, because then they're like, what? They figure it out eventually. But I found, like, if you're spinning in a circle and you click right before they stop spinning, that's kind of like the sweet time to do it. The exception to this would be still things. So for example, sit, you can wait until they're like holding a sit, but you just want to do it after a second.
I believe that's called splitting.
You are 100% right. Yeah, splitting the behavior. Mm-hmm. To expand on that, this is why you're here. Yeah. Splitting would be if you're teaching a spin, to stay on that example. If you lure like a third of the way, treat, 2/3 of the way, treat, all the way, treat. So you're splitting up the behavior.
Which we have a video about.
We do have a video about it. We have a video on everything by the time this comes out.
I like luring the most, but you have to quit luring as soon as the dog is catching on to the behavior and start cueing it.
That's a good
Otherwise,
point.
they'll rely on the lure or seeing the treat every time you want them to do something.
Which is definitely a problem out in the field. So, for example, if Betsy's staring at a dog, she's probably not going to look at a treat. Well, Betsy would, but River wouldn't. So if he's really consistent on our verbal, or like we can get in front of him with like some sort of cue with our hand, then he's more likely to do it than follow an actual treat. You want that muscle memory in there. So get those muscles working. And then here's something that I consider a trick in service dogs, but you call it
Tasks.
tasks. So what's a task? She actually has a service dog to out you. What's a task that Revel knows?
He knows a few.
He does know a few.
I
I know a favorite, and if you
he
don't
knows
say it,
to
I'm gonna say it.
alert.
Yes, he
a
can
medical
alert. So medical alert, DPT, and my favorite one is find, where he can find a person. So like if you're out,
Yeah, or find the car.
find the car. So that's the one I think looks the coolest because he like puts his nose up in the air. It's so cute.
Which, by the way, he does not go off leash to do this. Some people do that, and I don't really agree with that. I think it's dangerous to the dog.
It is dangerous to the dog. Somebody could steal it. The dog could,
Yeah.
even if the dog's really well behaved. I understand it because some people will be unconscious, but then have like your
Right.
dog bark to alert.
Yeah,
is really
I prefer
common.
barking because then it attracts attention. Whereas if you see a dog just wandering away, people don't know to follow it.
Yeah.
They might think the dog's lost and then try to take it.
Yeah. Or even like call the number on the tag and you're unconscious, and you want people to come over.
Yeah.
And
it might work if you're like at home, yeah, totally the dog can go and find somebody, but out in public.
yeah, it's just a risk. And then, yeah, trick training is super important. Like, if you're not convinced on trick training, which you probably are if you're taking the time to watch this video, because it's really only people like me that watch this video that are really into trick training. But if you need convincing, then I'm going to go back to the enrichment, where a dog that's enriched is going to be happier, debatably healthier, and generally better behaved. So obviously if you're consistently reinforcing bad behavior, enrichment won't make your dog better behaved. But if a dog is just bored and that's what's making them chew on shoes or bark or whatever, then mentally tiring them out is going to be kind of key to like starting to curb those behaviors alongside training. I don't rely on either one solely. So trick training is a really good way to work out your dog's brain. And for the dog trainers out there, here's a secret. It's a good way to get clients. If you put on a hat that says dog trainer, which we do have,
Or a shirt.
or a shirt, and you go out on the field and you have your dog do this fancy dance, and it's like staring at you, and it lies down, and it stands, and it spins, and whatever, dances, then people will come up and be like, that looks cool, you must know what you're doing. Here's the secret. It's easier, in my experience, to get a dog to, like especially a herding breed, to do a trick than it is for it to calmly walk by another dog. But it doesn't look flashy when a usually reactive dog walks calmly by another dog.
Yeah.
So, people nonetheless.
That's why reactivity videos are pretty boring, if you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, because the dog should not be exploding and barking if they're being trained. They should be calm.
Yeah, for example, Betsy, like, used to bite people. I'm talking, like, anyone new that would come in the house, she would run up and bite the back of their legs. And it left some
And
marks.
not like a herding dog chasing
No.
for fun. This is like fearful,
Yeah.
scared of the person type of thing.
And the reason we don't have videos on it is because we don't let her do that. We don't, like, have her bite and then, like, smack her or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, because we're just going to be like, well, let's not allow that behavior so that the behavior doesn't happen again type of a thing.
Give her a better behavior,
Yeah.
more rewarding behavior.
We do have one exception, which is we put... You know what? This is not about that. This is about trick training.
Yeah.
But yeah, so trick training's great in that way, and I think you guys should do it. So if you don't know what to train your dog, we have an ever-growing playlist of, like, trick training on our channel, so just scroll through and be like, that looks cool. And this can be as basic as sit, to as advanced as a come by, which is a herding behavior, or the weave back through your legs that I mentioned before. Have fun training. We're out. See, you did great.
I feel like I'm gonna pass out.
Oh.